They say the savanna favors the swift, but today, the hunted rewrites the rules. A dust flag snaps above the grass as a calf stumbles, and the horizon folds into teeth and muscle. The lions close like falling gates, breath rasps, hooves stutter, and every heartbeat sounds like a verdict. Panic shears the herd apart, a dark river splitting around a snag of fear. Yet in the rupture, something ancient stirs an arithmetic, older than pride or hunger wear weight, and will outvote Fang. The matriarch wheels once, twice, measuring distance the way storms measure heat. The bull lifts his head, a wrecking ball waiting for gravity. The calf's cry threads the thorn-scented air, thin but unbroken, stitching courage back into fleeing backs. Dust whitens the sun, shadows sharpen into choices. Then the buffalo turn. The earth listens, and with a thunder that makes birds unright their flight, the comeback begins. The chase pulls a ripcord through the grass, and sound thins to filament flies hiss. A lark snaps its song in half, and the ground becomes a drum nobody asked to play. The pride moves with arithmetic cruelty, one to test, one to herd, one to sever. The calf's legs accordion over stones, yet the cry that leaks from him is steady as a metronome, a thread that refuses to snap. The herd floods one way, then another, a river confused by its own banks, but fear, like weather, shifts on a pressure no eye can see. The wind slides. The scent of calf swings back into the faces of those turning away. Where the dust brightens, a memory returns, circles formed in darker years, horns locked against night. In that breath, between breaking and broken, the old geometry gathers mass momentum, many against few waiting for the first body to turn potential into thunder. The lions ply their craft as if reading from an atlas of panic. The flankers pinch the corridor, the anchor drifts to block the horizon, and a young huntress toys with space like a cat with string. The calf falters at a mound of bitten earth, skidding, folding, writing. A small body rewriting the verb. Persist from a knoll. The big maned shadow judges odds as though odds were loyal things. Below him, the matriarch counts breaths, not steps, mapping every gap between tooth and bone. A bull shoulders through a thicket of horns, his patience an anvil awaiting heat. Over everything, dust smears the sun into a coin of milk, and in that tarnished light the herd begins, subtly, to lean away from flight, toward the gravitational pull of one fragile life. Air presses tight, the way rooms do before a verdict. The pride's geometry sharpens a V, closing like a book on an unwritten chapter. The calf slips again, knees carving crescents in powder, yet his eyes keep finding the black wall of bodies beyond. As if belief were a magnet, the wall quivers, its edge frays. Then from somewhere inside comes a single stamp, dull, declarative. Another answers. You feel it in the ribs before the ears confess, a rhythm waking. Hooves test the skin of the earth, then commit. Shoulders square, necks lower until the world is nothing but horn and horizon. Fear does not vanish. It is shouldered aside by something heavier. The first buffalo breaks rank and turns, dragging the herd's center of gravity with her like a moon hauling its tide. Silence fractures. The herd doesn't shout, it accumulates. 1,000 minor decisions, each hoof a vote, merge into a platform no predator can veto. The front rank lowers, and dust leaps up like breath from a sleeping giant. Across that breathing ground the lions recalculate. The young one's tail twitches with doubt. The torn-eared hunter exhales as if tasting the past. The man-judge blinks, eyes narrowed to ledges. Between them stands a small life on spindly stilts, swaying but unyielding, the axis of a new mathematics. The first charge will not be tidy. It will be sound and weight and the wild grammar of impact. But already the outcome bends. The calf lifts his head, and the earth, pleased with the choice, tightens its grip beneath a nation of hooves. The ground hardens into old architecture mounds like broken citadels, vents breathing warm earth. The chase condenses here, funneled by thorn and baked clay, until the small one stumbles into the lee of an anthill, and the world narrows to breath and shadow. The circle draws in, not rushed but inevitable, each step a bead on a tightening string. Dust paints everything the color of caution. Claws test the air, horns angle lower, uncertain where to spend their weight. A gust slides across the plain, brushing heat from skin, shifting the ledger of smell and sound. With it comes the echo of distant hooves, undecided thunder. The siege begins without a charge, eyes measuring windows, muscles loading questions. The mound at the calf's back is a wall and a trap, a place to brace or to be pinned. Between heartbeat and impact, time dilates, and the plain holds its breath for the first decision. Silence acquires edges. The nearest hunter drifts sideways, carving off escape like a mason removing stone. Another anchors the far flank, tail riding loops of calculation through the haze. The small body steadies, knees trembling, breath counting the distance to help that may not arrive. The mound hums with tiny lives, a subterranean choir beneath the theater of teeth. The dark wall of bodies downstream falters, then eddies, as if remembering a map lost in panic. One figure within that wall never looks away, weighing not courage, but timing. The physics of mercy. The air smells of iron and sap, and the faint, sweet panic of crushed grass. Above, a vulture scribbles a lazy figure, wagering on gravity. The circle pinches tighter. The plane offers one last option to break the ring. Someone must become a hammer. Weight gathers in the forelegs of the waiting muscles braided, tendons tuning to a single note. The hunters test the perimeter, feinting in small bites of space that teach the rhythm of fear. Hooves fret at the crusted dirt, engraving half-decisions. A slip will be fatal. A lunge, ruinous. Yet stalemate is a slow kind of ending no one can afford. A second wind moves across the grass, a cool ribbon threading heat, and with it the scent rewrites the scene nearer than expected. Tide, turning against the moon, the nearest predator hesitates, ears scanning the horizon's drum. The mound vibrates almost imperceptibly with the tremor of distant steps. Eyes meet across dust, not as stories, but as vectors. The answer is no longer whether to go, but how to strike the hinge on which this moment swings. The first test arrives like a question hurled at a door. A rush, a skitter of claws, a flash of teeth that finds only air. The small one folds, protecting the soft maps of throat and belly, while the nearest horn sketches a warning through the dust so close it combs whiskers. The circle flexes, spills, then reforms, learning what will and will not bend. The mound takes a scrape, leaving red on clay, a signature the earth will file away. Behind the haze, the dark river of bodies thickens, coalescing around a steady drum. The hunter's confidence thins into arithmetic. The cost of each second rises like heat. A pause falls. Strange and clean, and in that pause arrives the promise of impact. The kind you feel first in bone, then story. The plain shivers as choice finds its shape. Then the horizon lifts snow. It thickens, becoming sound before it becomes sight. The ground begins to speak in 100 hooves, articulate and rising. Those within the ring glance outward, recalculating the math of courage versus hunger, and for the first time the solution refuses to balance. The waiting wall resolves into faces black with dust and bright with decision. At the front, a pair of shadows step clear, shoulders not pleading but declaring. Between them the small one shivers, pressed to baked clay that now feels less like a coffin and more like a brace. The air cools as the sun leans toward evening, long spears of light turning dust into coins. What began as a siege becomes a countdown. The plane does not choose sides. It merely amplifies decisions. And the next decision races in, carrying thunder. The herd does not arrive, it assembles, a thought becoming muscle. Lines appear where there were none, drawn by instinct older than maps. Hooves drum in braided tempos. Dust rises and turns the light to brass. And within that metal-colored world, the leaders read the hunt like a score. The lions compress to a knot of caution near the mound, eyes flicking, tails writing anxious cursive in the air. The calf steadies, legs trembling, pressed to earth like a nail, awaiting the hammer that will set it true. The matriarch gauges wind, slope, spacing the language of edges. The bull studies angles the way storms study valleys. Between them forms a wedge no speeches, only geometry aimed not at bodies but at the hinge of the circle. Breath tightens. A vulture withdraws its lazy orbit. Even the termites pause. The plane inhales with the herd, and what was panic hardens into plan. First contact is not a clash but a study. The wedge advances and hesitates, advances again. Each pause is a question posed in horn and shoulder. The lions reply with feints, shaving off yards, seeking a misstep, a stumble, a soft seam to pry. The calf stays pinned to clay, eyes bright with animal math, measuring arrival against collapse. The matriarch throws a feint of her own, a diagonal promise that forces the nearest hunter to blink and yield a heartbeat's worth of ground. The bull squares to the ridge, daring the mane to descend and make the arithmetic honest. Dust coats tongues and stings eyes. The light dims to copper as the sun kneels lower. Somewhere behind the front, a nervous buffalo misreads the rhythm and surges. The line wobbles, learns, steadies. There is no hero, only momentum finding its footing. The circle tightens again, pride instincts warring with prudence. The young huntress tests the left edge, quick as thrown light, and meets a wall of horn that hums the note of warning. She sails sideways, tail a metronome of denial. The matriarch does not chase. She draws the line a step forward, then another, converting air to territory. The bull holds center, a fulcrum turning pressure into promise. The main judge lowers his head and pretends decision, patting 3 heavy steps that bend the horizon. Then he stalls uncertain whether the cost of reality matches the courage of theater. The calf breathes in counts of 4, as if coached by the mound's tiny choir. The herd behind stacks thicker, ranks knitting into a dark tide with a bright edge. In that woven mess, bravery becomes ordinary, and ordinary becomes unstoppable. Now the wedge breathes together. Hooves fall in phrases, rests and accents shared like a drumline reading a single bar. The lions attempt a pincer, but the front rank tilts to meet it. 2 bodies, drawing an invisible bracket around the calf. The air is a page of moving punctuation, commas of tails, dashes of legs, exclamation points of lowered horns. The mound scrapes the matriarch's flank. She accepts the sting and keeps the angle. The bull feints right, and the maned one mirrors stew late. The opening yawns left, small but real. Dust avalanches off hides, turning the scene to silhouettes inside a furnace. In that furnace, the idea of retreat begins to smolder at the edge of the pride's nerve. The calf takes one hobbling step toward the channel and is not punished. A boundary shifts, quiet as breath. Then the sound changeless chaos, more chorus. The back ranks arrive in layered pressure, a living slope pushing intent forward. The lions feel it first in the feet, a tremor that defeats calculation. The main judge lifts his muzzle to test a breeze gone traitor. The answer stings of horn and will. The young hunter's confidence frays into sharp, darting glances. The matriarch quickens by a fraction, and the bull matches, and with that tiny agreement the whole front tips into motion. The calf slips into the lee of their bodies, and the wedge becomes a cradle with edges. The plane offers one more obstacle-rutted ground, treacherous as memory, but the herd floats over it, heavy and precise. The siege unthreads. What remains is a line gaining purpose, a chorus gaining volume, and predators who understand that music can break bone. Impact arrives like a cliff too sudden to argue with. The front rank throws its weight, and the world becomes percussion hooves, slamming drumheads of earth, horns slicing seams in dust. The predators don't break. They fold around the blow like water around a boulder, elastic and clever, letting momentum overshoot. A paw flashes, finds flank, draws a red signature that steams in the heat. The line staggers, not shattered but shaken, discovering that courage can skid if it meets cunning at the wrong angle. Sound narrows to breath and grunt. Somewhere, a bird's cry cuts clean through the grit. The small life at the center wobbles, then steadies behind a shoulder that trembles but does not yield. In the pause after collision, something new is learned. Mass alone will not decide this. Cadence must. The plain, impartial as always, offers room for a second lesson. The recoil stings pride more than hide. Momentum bleeds off into awkward steps, and the front must choose between retreat, that becomes rout, or stillness, that becomes recalibration. Stillness wins. Heads lift just enough to breathe. Eyes map distances afresh. Shoulders angle not for spectacle but for leverage. Across the dust, the hunters spread like ink, trying to write a new trap around the hesitation. Tails twitch, whiskers sift the breeze, but confidence carries a hairline crack. From the rear, pressure builds again. Yet this time it is measured, beats counted, a drum line finding the pocket. The red mark on hide drips into memory, not weakness. The small heartbeat at center listens to this revised music and stands closer to the wall of bodies that sing it. When the second push comes, it will carry not only thunder, but time. Practice enters the body as ache. The front rank rolls its weight from hoof to hoof, rehearsing angles, learning which horn line opens lanes without gifting flanks. A gust shears the dust and the ridge reappears, with the heavy mane etched against sky like a promise unkept. He prowls 3 paces and stops, performing certainty he does not own. Below, the young huntress flirts with speed, slicing at the edge until a warning snort nails her to stillness. The wound along the flank clots into tacky black, a badge and a lesson. Low voices breaths, rumbles move through the herd like instructions. The small heartbeat at the center lifts its chin to watch, as if studying the choreography that might save it. Between beats, a rhythm clicks press, pause, pivot, press. The plane leans slightly, as if approving the new math. They try again, not harder, smarter. The lead drifts half a body left, inviting a bite. When it comes, the pivot is already baked into muscle. A clean quarter turn that converts teeth to empty air and air to territory. The second in line arrives a heartbeat later, a syncopation that catches the pursuer mid-correction. Dust lifts in veils. Light warps into bands of brass. The hunters shift to lateral harassment, turning the world into geometry angles and arcs and narrow windows. The answer is to widen the room's shoulders spread. Horns scribe crescents that claim space without spilling speed. The small center figure keeps pace, a lantern inside a moving fortress. The front breathes in 4s, the rear in 2s, and the whole herd becomes a polyrhythm that confuses pursuit. Not now. Confidence returns without swagger. The front holds a line that flexes like good wood, bending to store power, not to break. The hunters taste the failing edge of their circle and try a last brazen cut, fangs bright, bodies low, a bet against the metronome. It almost works. A hoof snags, a knee kisses earth. The world tilts, but the new cadence catches the fall. Mass flows sideways, shoulders becoming sure, and what would have been ruin becomes speed. The ridge figure pretends to descend, then thinks better. The dusk catches his mane and makes the hesitation luminous. Behind, the chorus thickens, every step an oath. The small life at center stumbles once more and rises within the shelter of rhythm, not just bodies. As the sun flattens to a coin, the lesson completes itself. This fight will be won by timing, not teeth. The plane becomes a staff of music, and the herd writes in bold strokes. Front bodies stagger themselves into a living brace, a dark beam with a sharpened edge. Behind, pressure gathers in measured pulses, not a rush but a tide trained by shore. Predators spread to puncture the rhythm, tails flicking like metronomes set too fast, testing for a weak beat. The answer is choreography, a glide, a pivot, a stepped inhale that turns pursuit into empty air. Dust veils the ankles of the world. Sunlight fractures into brass ribbons that cling to horn and whisker alike. The small heartbeat moves within the architecture, carried by angles rather than luck. When a feint comes from the right, the line flexes left. When a lunge arrives low, the shoulders answer high. Confidence hums, not loud, but steady, a current traveling skin to skin, hoof to hoof, until intent hardens into form, practice tightens into doctrine. The front breathes in fours, the rear in twos, and in the seam between them rides a push that never shows its teeth. A hunter darts for the hinge and finds only timing in empty pocket where a body seemed to be. Another tries to bait a chase. The answer is refusal, a stillness that costs nothing and buys space. The light leans, and with it, the field of choices tilts toward those who can hold a line. From the ridge, pride becomes math written in silhouettes, angles tested, outcomes discounted. The calf lifts its head to follow the rhythm's rise and fall. A pupil in a moving school. A gust lifts the dust, and for a moment the world is blurred, as if memory had smudged it. When clarity returns, the formation remains charmed by theatrics, convinced only by steps that land in time. The next measure is all syncopation. One body dips. Another arrives. A third ghosts across the angle to turn teeth into wake. The predators answer with parallel movement, a lateral braid meant to saw through courage, but the front answers by widening the room's shoulders spill outward. Horns scribe crescents that claim air before claws can. A red memory along a flank does not weaken resolve. It focuses it, like a scar that sharpens a blade. The ground trembles under the back ranks. A steady sermon of weight, and that sermon begins to edit the hunt's script. The ridge figure toys with descent, then pauses at the lip of commitment, sensing a hinge grown sharper than expected. The calf stumbles once, caught by the architecture's timing, and rights itself within its fortress of moving edges, learning that salvation has a beat. Now hesitation blooms where hunger used to live. The hunter with the torn ear hovers a half-beat longer at each window, listening to a rhythm she cannot own. That sliver of doubt travels like frost along a fence, reaching the paws of the eager, the throat of the crown. The front senses it and writes a new sentence, an offered gap, a sudden quiet, a perfectly timed arrival that slams the door without sound. Hooves punctuate the phrase. Dust provides the italics. In this grammar, pursuit becomes subject, retreat becomes verb, and the object soft and fragile remains unbroken. The air cools, and with it the glare of decision recedes to a fine edge. Confidence thickens, not into arrogance, but into a practiced calm. The kind that lifts heads without inviting pride to speak. The formation becomes a lesson. The plane will remember: press, breathe, offer, take. Behind, the chorus lays down a runway of hooves. Ahead, the edge glides rather than strikes, saving violence for the moment that will matter. Predators trade glances that ask for certainty and find arithmetic instead. The crowned watcher lowers his chin until it brushes the brink of commitment, then lifts it again as if the dusk itself had vetoed the charge. The young quick one paces, tail a metronome of refusal, and the hesitant O-torn ear, bright against the fading sun, drifts a step back, then another, escorting her doubt, as though it were prey she cannot carry. Within the moving bastion, the small life's breath evens. What began as rescue ripens into reclaiming not victory yet, but the kind of balance that makes victory choose you. Dusk narrows the world to edges and breath. The formation hums, a living wedge writing clean lines across the savanna, when the ground betrays ripples of old rain cut into hard clay, a staircase of traps. The front skims, the center dips, the rear presses a beat too bold, and suddenly the rhythm frays. From the flank, bravado surges, a shadow unspools from the dust, low and fast, teeth reading for punctuation. The first hit is not flesh but balancing ankle flick, a stumble that rings a gasp from the herd's great throat. The chorus falters, the predators hear it, the circle twitches back to life. Yet the lesson of cadence holds: the leading bodies do not chase the threat, they gather it. Shoulders tilt, an invisible hinge locks, and mass flows into the slip like poured iron. The moment teeters on the lip between rout and rescue, listening for the beat that will decide its name. The answer arrives not as rage but as architecture. The front rank separates like gates on hidden hinges, opening a narrow corridor that glows with dust light. Into that lane the small life is drawn, not pushed, its steps counted aloud by the press of bodies. A hunter meets the corridor with scorn and leaps to close it. The leap finds a wall. The second body is already there, a dark comma inserted in the sentence, forcing breath to change direction. The circle, once scripture, becomes scribble still. The crowned watcher finally chooses gravity and drops from the ridge, his weight writing an argument the plane must hear. The wedge does not flinch. It lowers, breathes, and shows him the cost. He can have impact or exit, not both. He chooses the latter, leaving a tail of doubt, bright as a banner. The corridor holds, the lesson widens. Speed tilts the world. The quick one from the pride knives across the front to close, too clever in the corridor's far door shrinks to a coin. Claws skim hide, air rips, a cry bites the light in half. The leading shoulder dips to take the blow, turning what should be puncture into scrape, but the price is angle for a breath. The fortress gapes. From the rear, pressure becomes thunder, and thunder becomes rescue, yet only if the hinge holds. The small life, reading panic in the dust, almost folds, then remembers the drum and matches it. 1, 2, 3, up. The corridor brightens. A body of doubt crosses the hunter's faces, brief as lightning and just as true. The quick one tries again, more desperate than precise, and meets nothing but timing, a pivot that converts speed to weight. The coin of safety grows to a door you could drive weather through. Now comes the wager. The quick one threads the needle, choosing audacity where prudence starves. She dives for the soft map beneath the ribs, claws a whisper from completion when the world rotates. The front's inside hoof digs, the outside horn writes a half moon, and the corridor becomes a trap door that swings her into daylight with nothing underfoot. Wait follows line. Line becomes verdict. A roar opens on the ridge and dies there, unwilling to spend blood on certainty. The air smells of iron and lightning without rain. The small heartbeat at center doesn't see the near goring. It feels the wind of it, a hot seam stitched beside its path. Hooves mark the final measure, press, pause, punish, breathe. The quick one reels away, fur scored by a horn's breath, eyes filled with a new mathematics. The fortress does not chase, it advances. Silence, then verdict. The chorus behind becomes coastline solid, inevitable while the edge glides like a tide that has learned patience. The hunters inventory their options and find subtraction, fewer windows, slower feet, the taste of timing lodged like grit in the teeth. The crowned one squares once more and squares finally to retreat. The torn-eared veteran lowers her gaze and yields the lane as if gifting it. The quick one licks dust and studies distance with a new religion. In the moving cradle, the small life steadies to a walk, each step a sentence returning to grammar. The sky thins to violet. Insects start their bright electricity. The plane exhales the day's heat, like a story letting go of its last lie. What began as survival has become correction. Ahead waits a clearing where the herd will close its circle and write the final line. The comeback, now undeniable, asks only for the period. Night is not a curtain. It's a lens narrowing the world to what matters. The herd pours into a clearing where grass grows low and wind moves clean. And there they begin, the oldest ritual, closing the circle. The calf, once a syllable of panic, becomes a period around which grammar forms. The leaders ease their pace, trading speed for certainty, setting a cadence the tired can keep. The predators linger at the rim of sight shadows with memory esting the air for permissions that no longer exist. A firefly blinks, and another answers, and soon the field is pricked with small approvals. Breath slows. Blood cools. The day's arithmetic tallies itself in hoof marks and pauses attempt, answer, amendment. The torn-eared hunter watches without rancor. The main judge recedes to the ridge and becomes a rumor. Within the ring, a hush drops that is not weakness but law. The circle seals, and the calf lies down. Recovery speaks quietly. Muscles unclench in waves, a choir of small permissions that body and earth exchange. The matriarch stands half asleep, drifting but alert, a hinge that never rusts. The bull lowers his head until horn and soil breathe the same temperature, a promise written in weight. Around them, the herd arranges itself into constellations of trust mothers near yearlings, old scars paired with new resolve. The sky fades to ink spattered with cold fires, and the wind turns cool enough to rinse the taste of dust from tongues. Somewhere beyond, the pride collects itself, hunger sheathed for now by arithmetic it cannot change. The calf dreams small hooves and tall grass, a future measured in seasons rather than strides. When he startles, the circle tightens a notch and then loosens, the way a hand learns to hold without hurting. The night accepts the edit and turns the page. Memory returns as instruction. Before dawn, the herd stirs, each body rehearsing the choreography that turned panic into planned press. Breathe, offer, take. The wounded flank stings when the air grows thin, but pain is only a sentence fragment. What matters is the paragraph it belongs to. The matriarch limps a little. She will keep the limp. It will sharpen her, not shorten her. The bull tests the horizon with a low rolling note that ties the scattered dark into a single rope. The calf rises on stiff legs and seeks the warm lee of a shoulder without thinking, because thinking is louder than need. At the edges, jackals write their cursive hopes and rub them out. Even the termites resume their industry, repairing the theater's wall with pellets and faith. The sky pales from iron to pewter. What was nearly lost becomes instruction passed hoof to hoof, generation to generation. Dawn spills like metal warmed in a smith's hand. Birds stitch the horizon back together, and the herd begins to move with the day's first certainty: water, shade, pasture. The predators are ghosts now, important ghosts, the way cliffs are important to rivers. They shape, but they do not own. The matriarch sets an angle that skims the safer ground, turning the ruts of yesterday into markers not to be repeated. The bull takes the downwind side, a wall against anything that prefers surprise. In the middle, the calf walks, not carried but kept. The difference a future will remember. Each hoofprint edits the landscape's memory of the night here. Fear ran, here it regrouped. Here it wrote a different ending. The sun finds the red mark on hide and makes of it a medal. The air tastes of grass, seed, and relief. The comeback resolves into habit. By full morning, the plain looks ordinary again, the miracle's favorite disguise. Wind combs the grass into calm sentences. Insects trade static for song. The herd spreads in a wide, confident crescent, faces down, mouths busy, the urgent converted to useful. The calf tests a short run and stops, surprised by the luxury of stopping. The matriarch lowers her head to graze and lifts it not with fear, but with verification. The bull stands broadside to the light, a black sculpture that remembers being kinetic. Far off, the ridge is only a line where stories like to perch. Today, it holds none. What remains are the marks, a scar that will teach, a limp that will warn, a young heartbeat that will one day stand at the front and choose timing over teeth. The earth smooths the dust and keeps the lesson. The buffalo turned back toward the lions. What followed turned the page for everything that listens.